A lot has changed since the last time I uploaded a video to this YouTube channel, but I'm back, and this is episode 9 of my PC flipping series. I don't really have any of the cool names that people have, like flipping PCs until X. I don't have anything like that, so I'm just kind of doing it. But this is episode 9. I mean, like I said, it's been 2 months, so there's been a lot of stuff that's happened since the last time I made an update video, and a lot of stuff that I haven't covered. So it's gonna take me like probably 2 or 3 videos to really go over everything that's happened in that time. But today, what I want to get out of the way is going over one of the PCs that I built, which I did have some troubles with, so we'll go over those as well. I'm going to be talking about basically everything to do with that PC, the specs and everything.
And also 2 sales. Somehow I forgot to mention that.
So to start off with the computer that I'm going to be talking about in this episode, we're going to go over the specs and then just some other general information. Then I'll get into the build footage. I'll talk about it a little bit after that, benchmark it, and do a price breakdown. The first part of that is going over the specs. So for the CPU, I picked the Ryzen 5 5600X, and I paired that with 32 gigabytes of DDR4, Corsair Vengeance 3600 CL18, and 1 terabyte NVMe. I think it was the Samsung PM9A1, I honestly don't even remember. And for the CPU cooler, I just grabbed a Thermalright 360mm frozen, I don't actually know how to say the second part, frozen like note or not or something like that. Steve from Gamers Nexus called it Note. Obviously a 360mm AIO is going to be completely overkill for a Ryzen 5 5600X, but I got it for like $20 and I had it in my inventory. And the reason that I really picked it is because it would be a good pairing with the case that I wanted to use. And that case was the 2022 revision of the NZXT H7 Flow. The reason I specified 2022 is because they just came out with a new one. It is not that version. But for that case, a 360 is really going to be the best option. And like I said, I got it for like $20, so it's pretty good pairing. For the other parts, I'm just using a Gigabyte B550 motherboard and a 700 watt high power supply, which is 80 plus gold and B plus tier on the power supply tier list, so more than adequate for this build. But that's all the important core information on the specs and everything, so here's the build footage. Let me tell you, I actually had so many problems with this build. It is actually unreal. I cannot even begin to explain what was happening because I never figured out what was happening. And after I did this build, turned it on, got everything set up and all that, and started trying to benchmark it, I was having a bunch of weird issues I can't even begin to explain. And so I had tried for several days to fix them, and it actually got to a point where I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I put the thing over in the corner for like 2 weeks and I didn't touch it. And I worked on other PCs in that time. But you wanna hear something funny? I came back 2 weeks later, turned the computer on, did all the stuff I was doing before that was causing problems, and I couldn't get it to do the same thing anymore. It was just working fine. Like just completely fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I tried for probably 3 or 4 hours to try and reproduce the problems I was having before. Nothing. It just started working. So I'm not gonna complain about that, honestly, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel right, but yeah. So yeah, I truly don't even know what was going on there, and I ended up just scrapping all the footage I had of troubleshooting that because I guess it's irrelevant now, but I do still want to bring it up because I have 2 clips from that troubleshooting process, which are quite funny, so here you go.
Okay, what is going on? What? There's nothing in there.
So I actually had some second thoughts when it comes to the parts selection for this build. Since it's such a massive case and the Dell version of the GPU is so tiny, I just thought it didn't fit. So I made the decision to actually swap a lot of the internals into another case, which I had already built in, which means that I had to disassemble one of my other builds and then kind of reassemble them both with like mix and match more optimized part combinations. But the build that I did this with is the second PC that I went over in episode 6. It was built in the Corsair 4000D Airflow with a Ryzen 7 5700X and RTX 3080, also 32 gigabytes of RAM, and then a 2 terabyte SSD. I couldn't help but notice that this H7 Flow build kind of had worse specs, but higher quality parts in kind of every single other area. It had a better motherboard, but yet a worse CPU. It had a bigger case, but yet a smaller GPU. In my opinion, a nicer looking AIO, but yet a worse CPU again. More name brand RAM, but on the slower build. So I kind of just decided to switch a bunch of this stuff around. This is what build number 1 looks like after the swap. This one has the 3060 Ti, a Ryzen 5 5600X, 32 gigabytes of Team Group RAM, a 1 terabyte NVMe, a 700 watt power supply, and this time it's inside of the Corsair 4000D Airflow with the cheaper gigabyte motherboard. And for build number 2, here's what it looks like. I swapped the 2 terabyte SSD, Corsair ARM850 power supply, RTX 3080, and the Ryzen 7 5700X over to the H7 Flow. And these parts will really just pair better with the bigger case, better motherboard, and nicer looking cooler. So I'm definitely glad that I did this, and I think everything's a lot more balanced in the end now. I also decided to record some benchmarks on the 5600X and 3060 Ti build after I did this swap. I tested the computer in the same 4 games that I always do, but instead of recording all the way up in 4K, I dropped down to 1440p just because the card really can't handle 4K. Nowadays, the 3060 Ti does pretty decent in 1440p, but 1080p might be a bit of a better fit if you're looking for really high frame rates. With that, let's get into the benchmarks.
Alright, so next it's time for the price breakdown. The total build cost for this PC was $634.82. That's including tax, shipping, and everything. I'm going to list this build for $900 on Facebook Marketplace, and my target sale price is going to be $800. So that would leave me with a profit of $190.18 if it's sold for $800. Now that is before taxes are taken out, and I don't actually know if you guys care about this number, so please let me know in a comment whether or not you actually do. But adjusting for further taxes on that, it would actually come out to be an estimated profit of $142.64 that I would actually net after income taxes and everything. So for future reference, my build costs and prices paid are always going to be counting tax, as in sales tax, because that's applied instantly and I'm able to know the final amount down to the cent right at the time of purchase. But my profit and estimated profit numbers won't count taxes because I don't really know the exact amount down to the cent until later on. Like, I can subtract a percentage as an estimate or whatever, but I don't actually know until everything is finalized later down the line. and that will be what the tax adjusted profit estimate is for. So that's the profit minus about 25%. And then for the second computer that I got out of this case swap, the one with the H7 and the 3080, my total build cost was $920.99. I'm listing it for $1,250, and the lowest I'll take is only $1,200. Now, this is a way smaller gap than I normally would have put between my listing price and what I'm targeting after negotiations and everything, but I'm doing it as an experiment to hopefully attract a bit more interest. And if I sold it at $1,200, then that would be a profit of $279.01, but I don't think the 1 cent really matters. And the tax adjusted value would be more like $209.26, but that's again an estimate, so I don't know.
One of them was the Alienware from episode 6, which was basically what that whole entire video was themed around. And the other one was the white AMD build from episode 7. To recap, the Alienware had a Core i7 13700F, 16 gigabytes of DDR5, a 512 gigabyte NVMe, which is and then an RTX 4070 Ti, also with a hard drive. I picked it up for $900 in episode 6. And 2 weeks ago, I sold it for $1,150. I was actually honestly expecting to get more for this computer, but if you ask literally anybody, the market has been very, very slow recently, and I opted to just take a little bit lower profit in order to get some inventory liquidated. The profit on this one was like $247, and that's obviously before taxes. But I did not actually go to the transaction on this one. I just had my dad take it to work with him. So I don't really have any stories to tell you for that one. But the second computer, which was the white AMD build from episode 7, I'll put a little picture somewhere on screen here so that you can see it, what it looked like. That one was a nice compact white computer inside of the Montech Air 100, and for specs, it had a Ryzen 5 5600, 32 gigabytes of DDR4, a 1 terabyte NVMe, and an RX 6800 XT. It was an OEM model from Dell, and I had quite a few problems with it, honestly. It was overheating in the case which I tried to use it in the first place, so I had to swap it to the Montech, which did end up working out in the end, but the temps were still pretty high, and so just in case anything were to ever go wrong with it, which I don't think would, but just in case, because better to be safe than sorry, I did give the guy a guarantee. I said, hey, if it ever has any problems, just text, bring it back, and we'll get it fixed up for you. The build cost for this one was actually $410, and if you just heard the specs, you're probably thinking, how on earth did I do that? And the reason is, I'll just be honest, the GPU I'm counting is free because it was my own personal GPU, and I don't really know what to price that at, and I didn't really buy it individually. I bought it as part of a whole entire computer, but that was like 2.5 years ago, way before I started flipping. So I just put it in as free, and the SSD was also free, so same situation there. So in reality, if I would have bought both of those parts for their actual regular used price, it would have been way higher and not $410 for a 6800 XT system. I sold it for $1,050, which again sounds like a really high profit of $640, but that number is obviously inflated. The guy I sold it to was actually there with his friend. They both knew quite a bit about tech and had also both built their own computers in the past. But unfortunately for him, something in his computer died a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't really have the time to go through the process of troubleshooting it, and he also didn't really want to either. So he figured, well, it's probably about time for an upgrade, and so he just went and bought my computer. So, yeah. Now that I've returned, I've decided that I'd rather get more uploads out more frequently with a little bit lower quality than one upload every now and then with higher quality. I've got a full guide to taking pictures for your PC flips coming soon, and it's got some tips in there that I haven't seen anyone else talk about, that I've just learned through my own experience. I'm, again, by no means an expert on anything, but if you're a PC flipper yourself, I'm hoping that guide could also be useful to you. So if you like what I'm doing here, then feel free to subscribe. It's the best, easiest way to support me, and it's completely free. And that's really all I've got. So as always, thanks for watching.